Top 10 secondaries for Warframe Steel Path in 2024. We have 10 amazing secondaries that are going to be utility and also just killing enemies and acolytes alike, summed up into a top 10 list, and now we're going to get into it. Secondary weapons are, like me and most of the people on planet Earth, consider secondary weapons their primary, meaning this list is going to be composed of some, of course, primers, and also weapons that are just going to destroy acolytes, and of course just crowd controlling enemies as well. Now, inside of the gameplay, I use Revenant with Mesmer Skin. I do not buff my weapon in any sort of way, he's just here so I don't die throughout the gameplay, and I do not use any sort of companion either, only the secondary is equipped. In some situations, I do use some other weapons. Now, I did mention, but number 10 is not better than number 1. These are just 10 amazing weapons everybody should get. They're gonna help you along in Steel Path and on your journey. And of course, if I did miss out on your favorite weapon, do leave it in the comment section down below. I'm very interested in hearing that. Once you're down there, there's that subscribe button, click it, and or the like button if you enjoy the content, my video, my voice, and everything. It would be greatly appreciated by me. So, without any further delays, let's get into the list. In the number 10 spot, we have the Acarius Prime, Genos Prime's signature secondary weapon. This weapon is a fast-firing, basically grenade-launching secondary where it drains ammo so fast, where we're gonna help that out with the build, but this weapon has incredibly good trash unit disposal abilities. It just kills trash units, or even any units, even Eximus units, without any issue. If you use any other Warframe other than Revenant, basically, that I'm using, you're going to be incredibly set without any worries with this weapon. Now, the build that I'm using looks like this. I actually utilize Blast with the recent changes as well, and it is working out incredibly well. Now, one thing to keep in mind, Cascadia Flare, change it out for Merciless if you don't have it. Pistol ammo mutation is incredibly good. I don't necessarily think you need the prime variant, so just use the base variant like I did, but if you do see you do, of course, use it. These builds are your personal choice. If you like to copy mine, you always can, but if you do, you're going to be seeing what I'm basically doing inside of the gameplay, a lot of damage. As I said, this weapon is incredibly fun because it is fast firing, easy to use. All you need to do is just reload and then dish out loads and loads of damage. Now, we're going to be moving on to the number 9 spot. In the number 9 spot, we have my favorite primer in the game. It is going to be the Epitaph. Now, this is going to be getting a prime variant soon, which is going to be even better. I'm going to love that so much, but this primer is one of the best for some people. In my opinion, it is my favorite to use. It basically fires a projectile that explodes on impact, doing a lot of statuses and applying a lot of statuses. Now, if you use the build that I use, you're also going to be applying Cold, Blast, and Corrosive. I'm going to be mentioning that here because Cold is very good to buff up your crit damage, which is going to be very nice. Now, it technically slows down enemies. If you don't want that, use this build. This is where you apply basically Heat, Viral, and the Blast. Why I don't use Viral on my primer is I always have it on my weapons themselves, so that's why I don't need it on my primer. If you're missing Viral, put in Viral. There is a lot of combinations where you can put here. You can even put radiation damage to do even one more status effect, so with the utility of this weapon is incredibly good. This is, I think, one of the most versatile weapons inside of the game, alongside some other ones, but we're going to be moving on to the number 8 spot. In the number 8 spot, we have your release bubble gun, yes, the compressor. The compressor is actually very good. When I first got it, I saw it had Viral as its base damage, or which I thought was incredibly good, but I didn't really get too much into it, but it is very fun. The build that I use, it looks like this, where I focus on Cascadia Flare again. We're going to be doing Viral, Heat, and Corrosive. This basically shreds through enemies. This applies 10 stacks almost instantaneously when you launch these bubbles, because of course it launches bubbles that explode into bigger bubbles, which who doesn't love that, and the amount of statuses you get is incredibly good. At lower levels, when I say lower levels, I mean level 180, you basically kill the enemies, you're not really priming them. This could be used as a primer if you use different elements. I personally think this build is mostly for killing, but when the enemies do get tougher, this is going to be incredibly good for priming. priming enemies, but incredibly good at killing them as well. A very fun weapon and a very good weapon I recommend almost everybody gets, and at least to test it out. Test it out. But if nothing else, test it out and see how it is, and you maybe enjoy it like I did. But we're going to be moving on to the number 7 spot. In the number 7 spot, we have the Okia Core. This weapon has been very fun to play with. Now, it does require a mod that costs 200 and 220 platinum. I know that's actually a lot, and it's been a pain to give that much, but it makes this weapon incredibly fun and incredibly good. Now, what is the Okia Core itself? The Okia Core itself has this special feature where you kill an enemy, 4 different tendrils spawn and lock onto different enemies close by and do a lot, and I mean a lot of status damage, where if you use this augment, which is up on the screen right now, and you gain ammo efficiency, critical chance and status chance. With this weapon, you hold down left click, and as long as you're killing enemies, you will never run out of ammo, and believe me, you're never gonna run out of enemies to kill because it kills basically everything. Now, it's not the best against acolytes in this situation because status effects don't really work that effectively on acolytes, but as a weapon to just use as a secondary, basically just have fun with, and holding down left click throughout the gameplay is incredibly fun to use and have. So that's why it's in the number 7 spot. We're gonna be moving on to the number 6 weapon. In the number 6 spot, we have the Lex, my first ever primed secondary, and I've loved it ever since. The incarnate form basically allows you to launch projectiles, or I guess basically walls of energy dealing radiation damage that have additional punch through. These waves are incredibly good. This basically reminds me of the Tenant Orca Plasmor, but this one doesn't bounce. The only bad thing is the small amount of charges, but it's not that bad. This is the build that I use. I go for viral, heat and radiation here, and Cascadia Flare, of course. This is gonna help out a lot, believe me, especially with acolytes. Acolytes are not really any sort of trouble for this secondary. This secondary actually saved me in the gameplay, which is very fun, because I actually lost my Mesmer skin, so this weapon can definitely save you in a pinch. It is very fun to use, very good as well. As I said, well, small amount of charges, but it's not that hard to charge it up. You just have to kill a couple of enemies with headshots. But that is an amazing secondary. We're going to be moving on to the number 5 spot. In the number 5 spot, we have the Kuva New Core, one of the best primers in the game. Now, what element should you get on it? If you want damage, you're going to go for heat. If you want to do a lot of status effects and basically use it as a primer, you're going to go for magnetic. Now, in my situation, in this video, we're going to go for magnetic because I use it for a primer for one reason and one reason only. It has a special status effect called microwave. This status effect basically enlarges enemies' parts, and it is considered for condition overload, so that's additional damage that you gain, so that's really cool. Now, the build that I use looks like this. We have basically 4 elements, so magnetic, radiation blast, and corrosive. Secondary and cupboard is pretty much a must here because random status effects is going to be the best thing in the world because of the incredible fire rate of this weapon and the amount of statuses you're going to be applying. So you're going to have a lot of damage on your condition overload. And you can also put an Augur Seeker inside of the build. I'm going to mention that here because it is going to be beneficial as well, but necessarily not needed if you're really good with melee. But other than that, that was the number 5 weapon. We're going to be moving on to the number 4 weapon. In the number 4 spot, we have the Prisma Angstrom Incarnate. This weapon is a lot of fun. I've actually fallen in love with this weapon ever since it came out. Basically, the Incarnate form is incredibly easy to charge up. You basically fire off one shell and you tag enemies a couple of times, it's fully charged up. You switch to the Incarnate form and it fires missiles that bounce around the room, dealing with my build, this one on screen, heat damage and also corrosive, and just killing everything. It is very, very fun to use. A weapon that a lot of people sleep on. I do actually have a build with the Blast and Zephyr, so if you want to check that out, that's in the little eye up there. It is very, very fun, believe me. And this weapon is just very good in general, even without Blast. As I said, nothing really, I guess, poses a threat to this weapon, and when you need it, you're easy to charge up because you just need to fire off one shell, and that's basically it, or one shot, whatever you want to call it. But we're going to be moving on to the number 3 spot. In the number 3 spot, we have the Furious Incarnate. Sadly, not the prime variant, but the base variant is going to do. This weapon basically blinds me with purple every time I use it, and you might be seeing it on the screen right now, but it does about the same amount of damage, down to being a lot. With my build, it turns into a heat beam weapon, where basically everything just, you point left and right, and everything will just die. The sheer amount of heat procs that you apply is incredibly high, and very, very good against basically everything that you're gonna come across, even acolytes. So this weapon is very good, and lucky you, whoever has the prime variant for this, because I imagine you're gonna enjoy it a little bit more. But we're gonna be moving on to the number 2 spot. In the number 2 spot, we have the OG Incarnate Elatum. This weapon is the only weapon that I use for Netra cells. I'm basically running Revenant with the Elatum right now in the gameplay, and I'm gonna keep it running, and I just do everything. Basically, the weapon kills everything. The Incarnate mode basically turns this weapon into a massive damage dealing, non-critical weapon, keeping in mind, looking at the build also up on screen right now, where we do so much heat, corrosive, and radiation, it just basically eliminates everything. It doesn't matter if it's the Murmur faction, it doesn't matter if it's just any faction, this weapon will get the job done. I'm personally incredibly bad at charging up the Incarnate form, but if you're good enough and if you know how to aim for headshots, then it is going to be incredibly fun for you. This weapon is very nice, and one weapon, if any of these weapons, I recommend you truly get as a damage dealing secondary in your arsenal. But we're going to be moving on to the honorable mentions. In the honorable mentions, we have weapons such as the Tenant Cycron, the Tenant Plinks, which I actually made an Ash build with, and I'm gonna actually maybe posting that one day. We have the Piranha Prime, which is one of my favorite prime weapons in the game. The Dual Toxicist Incarnate. This weapon is incredibly good and fun to use. Utility-wise, Grimoire is going to be pretty decent. I'm not the biggest fan weapon, but it definitely can be used for utility. And of course, we have weapons like the Canter, which has a special use, at least in my situation, and of course the Atomos Incarnate, which is very nice and fun to use as well. Those are my honorable mentions. If I missed out on yours, I'm very sorry, but these are some weapons that I enjoy a lot in. I did actually use the Static War as well for a certain time. It was very good, but you know, leave me some of your honorable mentions or give me some of your favorite weapons in the comment section down below. I'm very interested, and one thing that you're probably interested as well is the number 1 spot. In the number 1 spot, we have the Spore Laser Kit Gun. And now, I don't usually mention Zaws and kit guns in my videos, but if I were to recommend only one, this would be the one to be. Now, the Spore Laser is made up of the Spore Laser, Haymaker, and Splat, and then utilizing this build, especially with Pack's Charge, basically allowing you to have infinite ammo, this weapon is going to be incredibly fun to use. If I need a weapon that I know that's guaranteed going to kill everything, and especially acolytes, sometimes even just like one-shotting them, completely obliterating them off of the map, this is the weapon that I'm going to take. Is it possibly the best weapon? Is it possibly the best weapon against trash units? Probably not. There's probably some weapons, some beam weapons in this list, or maybe some other weapons that can kill enemies faster, but if it were talking acolytes wise, secondary wise, this weapon is the one to beat. It is incredibly fun, and surprisingly enough, it is incredibly easy to use against acolytes, and one of the best weapons in the game, of course, alongside these other ones that I have mentioned throughout the list. And if you enjoyed this list, I do hope you did. Do leave a like, subscribe, comment down below on your weapons as well. As I said throughout the video, I'm very interested in hearing that, and very interested in hearing some of your secondaries maybe that I have missed out in the video. And I will see you guys in the next one. The Gaming Weasel loves you over and out.